It is my pleasure to celebrate with you here today the 100th anniversary of Cooperative Extension, an organization I strongly believe in and one that has been a very important part of my life for a long time. My name is Bobby Moser, and I am the, underline this, retired Vice President and Dean of the College of Food, Agricultural, and Environmental Sciences at The Ohio State University. And since I've got a bit more time on my hands here lately, I have the honor to serve as the chair of the Board of Trustees of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. And as a part of the University Extension System for over 40 years, I had the distinct pleasure to work with and closely partner with the W.K. Kellogg Foundation on many occasions. Our name, Cooperative Extension, says it all. It says to me that Extension has always been about partnerships, and the W.K. Kellogg Foundation has been one of those long-standing, valued partners. Both organizations share many common values and beliefs. Extension began, of course, in 1914, and Mr. Kellogg started his foundation in 1930. More specifically, Mr. Kellogg always said, "I want to invest my money into people." And he was committed to helping people help themselves. Sound familiar? It should, because Extension values are very much in alignment with those two values of Mr. Kellogg's. For example, the foundation has been a force for good on behalf of building and developing sustainable and equitable food systems to support children, families, and communities who need them the most. Just like what Extension has been doing for 100 years and continues to do today. As a result of those combined efforts, significant accomplishments have been made and lives made better in scores of communities across this country, of which we can all be very proud. Today, Mr. Kellogg's legacy continues under the capable guidance of the Foundation's new president and CEO, LaJune Montgomery Tabron. LaJune was appointed president and CEO on January 1, 2014. And I want you to know, we believe she is the right person at the right time. She is the 9th president, the first female, and the first African American to hold this office. She is not new to this work. She is a 26-year veteran of the foundation, serving in several positions, and most recently as the executive vice president and the chief operating officer and treasurer. She is also unique in that she was deeply engaged in the foundation's work on the ground and in communities, leading grant making in Mississippi and New Orleans, two of the foundation's priority places here in the U.S. LaJune grew up the 9th child in a family of 10 in Detroit. She earned a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Michigan and a master's degree in business administration from the Kellogg Graduate School of Management, Northwestern University. Through the foundation's work, LaJune seeks to surround children, families, and communities with the same support and structure that enabled her to succeed. As I stand here today, I can't help but think about how the foundation's founder, Mr. Kellogg, might regard this historic event. I suspect he would be pleased and proud of this gathering and the tremendous good that has come out of the foundation's partnership with Extension, and especially proud of our new president and CEO, who so capably continues his legacy. With that, it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce to you today's capstone speaker, a tremendous individual and a leader, LaJune Montgomery Tabron. LaJune?
Good afternoon, and thank you, Bobby. I have the privilege of starting this new job with Bobby Moser. As our chair, Bobby is so deeply committed to exactly the work that we do on the ground. He is a great champion for children and families just as we all are at the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. And we strive to make sure that children who face barriers on issues of race or income are served and have full participation in society. I also want to thank Peter McPherson. I haven't seen him yet this evening, but he is a great friend of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. Peter McPherson was also a great friend of my old boss, Dr. Russell Mawby. And as I sat in my chair a minute ago thinking about how I might gain any credibility in this awesome space of people who have known extension service for years, and after following Sani, I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name, but the only credibility I thought I could bring right to the podium is that I was hired by Dr. Russell Mawby. And Dr. Russell Mawby still has such a deep passion for this work. And in fact, in order for me to feel any level of confidence in presenting today, I went and I spent 3 hours with him at his home. And I saw the passion and the love that he still has for extension. And the last thing he told me when he left, he said, "LaJune, you just remember, the work is to make best better." So I left there feeling a strong sense of alignment, because that's what we believe we do at the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. For 100 years, Extension has been leading innovation, research in agricultural systems, food, nutrition, and health, and economics and community development, among other important areas. For 100 years, Extension has been providing vital educational programs for youth and adults, increasing our nation's agricultural and scientific literacy. And for 100 years, Extension has been extending knowledge and building resiliency in people and in communities. And all along the way, the W.K. Kellogg Foundation has been a proud partner and supporter. Over the years, Kellogg Foundation has awarded nearly $22 million to support the work of the Extension offices. Our work extends across the nation, as well as in the particular priority places that we've named of Michigan, Mississippi, New Orleans, and New Mexico. In addition to the work on the ground, we have established 9 endowed chairs in order to advance the practices and principles of sustainable agriculture. And much of the work that happens through those endowed chairs happen through their cooperative extension offices. I could go on, but I think as we've learned, there is much to celebrate about the last 100 years in extension. And what I really like to talk about is the promise I see for the partnerships going forward. The partnerships that allow me to be so excited about the potential and change that can happen through these partnerships for children. The Kellogg Foundation has such an alignment with Extension that it just feels like a natural fit. When I went back and looked at Mr. Kellogg's writings, there's one thing that he says very clearly, in addition to what Bobby mentioned about investing his money in people. He also talked about the practical application of knowledge. And what I learned recently is that exact language is in the Smith-Lever Act. And I always think of Mr. Kellogg as someone who was brilliant. And he was either brilliant from his own genius or his wisdom to adopt and apply what he learned elsewhere. And in this case, 16 years after Smith-Lever Act, he wrote those words as he was forming his foundation. There were 3 principles that I found that really formed the alliance and the alignment that I see between my foundation and your work. The first one, as we've discussed, is the power of people to solve their own problems. It is a core value of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation today, and we state this very, very authentically, that we believe that people have the inherent capacity to improve their own lives and their communities. And as I look and I learn of your work, that's exactly how you've approached your work through the extension, Cooperative Extension Program. The second principle that, again, is truly aligns us is this issue of the practical application of knowledge. And Mr. Kellogg was one who survived in a sea of cereal companies. He was not the first. There were over 40, 50 cereal companies, even in Battle Creek, Michigan, at the time. But his ability to rise above that activity was his practical application of knowledge, and to take what was known and distinguish it for good. And that's, again, what I heard today as I listened to the work that you've done in Extension. And finally, the third principle that I believe is very much aligned is the understanding of the criticality of agriculture and its vital importance to our country. In the 1930s, Mr. Kellogg also understood this importance, and he developed programs that were very aligned to your work then. He ultimately he created a farm, an experimental farm, to test and refine new agricultural methods, which he eventually gave to the Michigan State College of Agriculture and Applied Science, which today is Michigan State University. Also, in the midst of the Great Depression, Mr. Kellogg took a 75-acre parcel of land and created it into gardens for employees of the Kellogg Company. And then he gave them instructions, the practical application of knowledge, instructions and prizes for tending these gardens. So again, these core principles have been the root of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, and they've guided how we want to collaborate in this space around change. And our work continues to grow each and every decade, starting with the experimentation of these programs at Michigan State. We also had programs at Washington State, North Carolina State, and Iowa. And then in the 80s, we worked with a 4-state collaborative to increase access to education for rural residents by building on their existing assets. And Mr. Kellogg was very interested in rural. And in fact, when he first started the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, his first grants were in rural America. And we continued to make those grants within those priority places that we have committed ourselves for at least a generation. Moving on, he also engaged policymakers and citizens on the need to protect groundwater. And this was some of the work that we were doing when I joined the foundation, late 80s, early 90s. And then in the 90s, we began to support leadership development. And we knew that community collaboration and leadership would be the hallmark of our work. We explored cross-border initiatives with New Mexico State. And then in the last decade, we launched a program called Engaged Institutions. And this examined how extension offices could deepen their reach into communities and play a more active role in collaborating to address community issues, engaging leading thinkers from all of the university's program areas and bringing that cutting-edge technology from the classroom to the community. And I think, Sonny, this is what you were saying, all this new technology and knowledge that will continue to emerge, that must be translated into community understanding. The Kellogg Foundation understood that, and it guided us through this, our work, and it helps us shape the vision that we have for this country. And that is that we envision a nation that marshals its resources to assure that all children have an equitable and promising future. A nation in which all children thrive. And it's very important to point out in that vision that we understand that it's going to take a nation. We understand that the W.K. Kellogg Foundation can't accomplish this vision alone. All of us must work together and really foster the partnerships that strengthen the work that we do. That's why we know that our work has to be alongside communities. And what we want to do is advance the best interests of all children, because we believe that healthy kids, educated kids, and secure families hold the keys to a brilliant future for children. There are some underlying approaches that we use as we think about our work. We understand that children have to be healthy, educated, and secure. But we also know that community engagement is key to providing an environment that will support these young children. We also understand that issues of equity, and particularly racial equity, are relevant and real in this country, and that we must address these very important and wicked issues as we think about how to make change for the future. We want children to be the center of every decision that's made in the community. We want policymakers, teachers, parents, and everyone's attention to be on whether we're improving outcomes for children. And we want to create conditions that propel their success. We want to make sure that as we make investments, that we are emphasizing our youngest and making sure that they are set up to succeed. If we don't, we believe that we're doing the equivalent of watering the leaves at the top of the tree. And I think we all firmly understand that only by concentrating water and other nutrients in the roots can we achieve a strong, leafy canopy at the top. So early childhood education is something that we value very deeply, and you'll see as we move forward today, I'll come back to that as one of the major challenges as we look about the next 100 years. As I look forward, the alignment is very, very clear between the W.K. Kellogg Foundation and the work that you do. And I suggest that as we move forward, we think about 3 very important areas. And I see a partnership where we could work together to create equity, to foster meaningful engagement, and to develop the next generations of leaders. When I speak about equity, particularly racial equity, we believe that equity is at the heart of the issues that face children and families today. Healthy food and opportunities for physical activity are the leading contributors in our fight to prevent and treat chronic illnesses that are disproportionately affecting low-income communities and communities of color. Cooperative Extension offices continue to create equity for the populations they serve, whether they are rural or urban. And engaging inner-city children in 4-H programs and community gardens has brought young people into the national dialogue on health and being proactive about their own health care. Reconnecting urban communities to the land plays a huge role in meeting the nutritional needs of residents who live in what we call food deserts. Families with limited access to transportation may be dependent on convenience and liquor stores and fast food outlets for their meals, totally cutting off access to fresh fruits, vegetables, and meats. You have a vital role to play in connecting local growers with local communities and raising awareness among policymakers of the need to support access through community gardens, farmers markets, food hubs, and intercity communities. And in the many rural communities that are part of our priority places, we see the offices take on economic development and partner with local farmers and ranchers, sharing the latest technology and thinking to expand the players in the food value chain. Building these assets in a community to encompass every step from farm to table is a huge economic driver in rural America. Local families also benefit when there is increased access to more and higher skilled jobs. In addition to equity, the issue of engagement remains very critical. And I'm sure you know this, and you've done an excellent job in your engagement and the progress of that throughout the years. But we must continue because we're uniquely positioned to engage communities as ambassadors of their respective institutions and to share information with their communities. And again, I believe it's extremely important that that knowledge transfers and not just emerge on communities. As members of their communities, they also can inform universities about their most pressing issues and their neighbors. And they can talk about what they're wrestling with, and this would be a very effective two-way path for problem solving and community building. Extension agents are essentially equipped to carry on this engagement. They are the agents of change who can engage local farmers, community members, school, and other community institutions through providing resources and educational outreach. Agents have their fingers on the pulse of what's going on in communities. Agents know the issues faced by the farmers and the ranchers, and agents can connect local farmers and community members and to leading experts and the latest advancements in environmentally responsible agricultural practices. I'm still thinking about those Google glasses and how they may come into community in a way that deploys this practical application of knowledge to these residents who are really waiting for that type of advancement. I mentioned earlier how impressive the work has been in extension regarding engagement. And particularly for us, we think a lot about the Kellogg Commission and the work that happened throughout that area when 24 universities, 5 former university presidents, a cross-sector advisory team, and leadership of the foundation took on the task of rethinking the role of public higher education in the United States. And in addition to recommending sweeping changes with universities, the Kellogg Commission called for renewed commitment to continuing education, discovery, and engagement in a rapidly changing world. The Commission asked universities to go deeper than outreach and service into what the Commission called engagement. It redesigned teaching, research, and extension and service functions to become even more involved with the communities. It gave birth to the engaged institutions model. Through this engagement lens, the Commission outlined areas where the application of knowledge was a unique contribution that could be made to communities in areas like education, the economy, agriculture and food, healthcare, urban revitalization, and community renewal. The Commission issued the call that we share to pay special attention to the needs of children, youth, and families. We were pleased to be a partner with numerous universities, and today the proliferation of that engagement model continues. And at this point, I would just like to congratulate Ohio State for achieving and receiving the C. Peter McGrath Community Engagement Award for 2013 for their Youth Scholars Program. And the only connection I can make to that is I know if Bobby Moser had anything to do with it, I understand completely how it happened. The final area that I'd like to mention is this area of leadership. Mr. Kellogg was a unique visionary about the need for leadership in specific fields like healthcare, public health education, adult education, and community colleges. When he started his foundation, his first act was to bring those experts into the same room with community residents because he knew that that collaboration would yield the best solutions for community. His vision of leadership has translated for us into very rich partnerships with universities and extension offices to cultivate and equip leaders in communities, in their homes and in classrooms. In addition to building the skills and knowledge of local experts in agricultural fields, I learned this as I was doing my research, but it became one of my favorite leadership initiatives, and that was your 4-H leadership commitment to build leadership and citizenship skills for youth. These young people now are contributing and are productive and self-motivated and will become the community-minded leaders for the future. As I looked at my own experience, I remembered when I joined the W.K. Kellogg Foundation in 1987 that I would listen to many program officers talk about 4-H. And honestly, coming from the city of Detroit, a very urban setting, at the time, I didn't know what 4-H meant. I wasn't real clear. I could pick up certain things, but I wasn't sure. So as I was doing my research today, looking back over the last 27 years, what I learned is that there are now 90 4-H clubs or programs in the city of Detroit today. So again, indication of how your work has grown and your knowledge has continued to grow deep into community. You may have heard that the Kellogg Foundation is renewing its commitment to leadership. And in fact, on Monday, next Monday, the Kellogg Foundation will announce its first leadership cohort under our new program, which is the Community Leadership Network. This program will include 120 fellows from all of our places and across the nation who will work together as a cohort to begin to dream and vision change for their communities. It's a 3-year commitment, and we will invest in building and equipping them to accomplish their vision for improving the lives of children. We want to help them become vigorous advocates and effective connectors for children, equipping them to carry on their work with community solutions that bring about collective impact. The focus of the program will be the concept of networks, because as I mentioned, we all realize that if you're this very passionate leader in community, you need support. You need to know how to access those who are like-minded and equally passionate and ready to move forward. We don't want our leaders and communities to be islands. We want them to be part of the fabric that actually leads to long-term change in community. So looking back and knowing that as we move forward, these issues of equity, engagement, and leadership will be the work of the future, I wonder how families of this country will fare as we continue to work very diligently in this space. But I do know, as has been said, that they need us now more than they ever have. If you look at some of the current statistics for children, most recently the Annie E. Casey Kids Count data, we know that we have over 16 million children who are living in poverty. 13% of children live in areas of concentrated poverty. And 2/3 of African American, American Indian, and Hispanic children live in poverty. Almost 1/4 of children in this survey weren't sure if their family would have enough to eat enough food for everyone. But yet, we know from the Center for Disease Control that more than 1/3 of children and adolescents are overweight, placing them at risk for diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and other highly preventable conditions. In many inner city communities, children simply can't get out for exercise due to a host of reasons, including lack of community facilities, community violence, and even toxic conditions in the land on which they play. So how can we, the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, and land-grant public universities, as well as cooperative extension offices, work together to create those conditions for children to thrive? How can we increase equity, engagement, and leadership? We do know that in order to do this, we must first address some of the root causes of these health inequities. Access to good food and opportunities for physical play are key for children to thrive in school, work, and life. So I think about the policies that might support good food for all residents in a community. And I think about maybe another tremendous opportunity as the Smith-Lever Act, or a piece of policy, changed universities forever. We know that communities have wisdom and ability to determine their own health and food destiny, but policy change might support the sustainability of that change and provide resilience for local, regional, and national systems. Let's work together to build values-based food systems in communities that are built on strategic partnerships, transparency, and trust. And again, just like the Smith-Lever Act addressed gaps in communication and met the needs of communities, maybe it's time for us to explore how another policy can play a role in creating and, more importantly, sustaining the change that's required today for communities. As I look into the future, one of the biggest issues we face is the issue of the changing demographics in our country. As a majority of births will be children of color, and we have huge disparities in health, education, and economic outcomes for children of color. How can universities, through their extension offices, work proactively across their communities to remove these barriers so that success and opportunity is affordable for all? And as we think about this issue, I also want to encourage you to think young, the prenatal to 5 age range. Right now, we know that the connections between early education, K-12, and higher education is very fragile. We need to build stronger connections, and we need to increase the funding needed to build a well-functioning educational system. On the issue of health, many schools, both urban and rural, serve children who live in food deserts. How can we partner with school districts to improve the quality and nutrition of school food? This is directly tied to improving academic performance. Can your agricultural programs reach out to local schools and support school gardens and educational programs? Also, young people have been hit really hard by the sagging economy. And in recent years, joblessness for workers between the 16 and 24 age range is at some of the highest rate. Joblessness is at some of the highest rates in our history. Young men and women of color face even higher rates of joblessness than the average. How can we connect education to the vast occupational opportunities that they need to give them the entryway to a career path? Whether it's through apprenticeships, entry-level jobs, or entrepreneurship. How can we deepen the relationships that you have and support the students that are at historically Black colleges and universities? And leveraging the relationships that you have in communities, how can you mobilize your networks to engage in addressing community-wide issues around the need for increased access to food? We know that food systems change, that you are doing generates economic vitality, and we also know that we're benefiting communities through the creation and expansion of local food enterprises. But using the power to convene across sectors, perhaps you have a role to play in sparking community conversations that will generate collective impact in this space. There's a great need to create equitable access to good food for all residents, to open opportunities for engagement, and then equipping community leadership with skills and information they need to implement community-driven solutions. What is the role of 4-H in influencing families through their children to make healthy lifestyle choices? How can parents be reached through volunteer opportunities and other community events? How can you leverage the partnerships across your universities to better engage in meeting the economic development needs of the community with a thoughtful eye toward advancing opportunity for jobs at all skill levels? Are there other communities who struggle with issues that are similar? How could you bring their leadership together to speak at community forums and engage in other long-distance technical assistance programs? How can you connect 4-H programs to other nonprofits who work with teens and youth? Are there opportunities to cultivate mentoring relationships for future leaders and to build leadership capacity of youth? And finally, can you expand your partnerships with community colleges to create opportunities to bring the latest information and technology to those seeking associate degrees and career certifications? Could we create innovative advancements in your communications platforms to reach children and families through mobile technology? What we know for sure is that families who don't own a computer are very likely to own a smartphone. And in fact, one of our grantees conducted a survey of parents utilizing smartphone technology and achieved an 85% response rate. This is unheard of using current technology. Universities often have the latest and greatest technology in a community. How can you invite students to learn how to use those tools? I recently learned of a program that's launching, and it's teaching young males of color how to code for creating video games. And what they're finding is there's a methodology where they learn very, very rapidly and are finding jobs through this experience. All of these opportunities create the plethora of the world that we seek to change. And I'm sure you can see how over the next 100 years, we have many opportunities to make a difference. Let's take this moment and build on the solid foundation established by the Smith-Lever Act to advance new policy and practices that harness this nation's resources to assure that all children thrive now and for future generations. I encourage you to never stop challenging yourselves to meet those most difficult, most entrenched, and most critical needs on behalf of today's children. And you have my commitment and that of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation that we will continue working to bring every resource to that table as well. Together, we can continue the outstanding partnership that has existed so that we can change the course of history for children over the next 100 years. I look forward to what we will accomplish together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tabron, for being here and for those words you brought to us. We welcome you to your new role as CEO of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a very important partner for us as you looked at the history of the foundation and what we do in Extension, a shared vision and mission that we have in agriculture, in positive youth development of communities, and more importantly, education and outreach, and the value of education and outreach. So we appreciate your comments. And I have a strong belief that we don't look for funders, we look for partners. And W.K. Kellogg has been a partner in a lot of work we've done for over the years. We appreciate that. And Dr. Moser, we thank you for your role as chair of the board and appreciate you helping us get Mr. Bond here to be a part of this.